and colon, then the salt. To do that, I'm going to let's see, show my desktop. I'm going to create me a little text file here. So basically that and some, and let me actually go back to my cache list. Some domain user was the username. There we go. That is now my list of hashes. And it could be a whole series of different hashes if I wanted to. As Modern Alex was showing y'all, Hashcat actually shines at its best when you're cracking multiple hashes. So I'm going to load the Hash Cat Gui. I'm going to point it at my hash file, which I saved to my desktop. I'm going to choose a word list, which in this case, I'll just go ahead and use my Cain word list since I have it. Like I said, go check out some of Ron's word lists. You'll probably have better luck. Let's see. Oh, looks like I can add an entire directory. Let's see if that actually works. I inadvertently did that, but let's see if that works. That'd be kind of neat.
Can you drill down to that and see if it'll actually check individual files?
Doesn't seem to.
Oh.
Well, let's run it and see what happens. You see, on the hash type, I chose domain cache credentials. I can choose different mode. We can set the rules. But it didn't seem to like... Oh, there we did. It did work. And by the way, you saw how it took Cain a couple of seconds, even when I was just password by itself? That was almost instantaneous. I literally thought I had an error because it came back so fast. Right there, bad password. Now, granted, we're using a very oversimplified case for the sake of the class, but you get the idea of how this could be used in a real-world environment. Someone finds a public station that a few domain users have logged into, dumps these hashes, and messes around. And it's really easy to do if it's an XP box or Windows 2000 box. I'm assuming Vista, you can probably still do it. I haven't tested. Windows 7, so far the tools I have don't work. But if someone finds a tool that does work, please let me know because I'd be curious to see it. I'm pretty sure eventually Mao or someone else, Mao's the guy who develops Cain. I'm pretty sure eventually they'll figure that one out. Okay. Originally, there used to be something called cache dump for dumping these, but Cain 2.68 and later implemented this already, and it's a lot easier to use Cain than the cache dump system. And Cain, I think, is currently almost up to 5. It's like 4.9 something. Hopefully before long, Mao will actually implement it and get better Windows 7 support as well. I know he's been working on some other things that were giving him problems, I think, in Windows 7 and has been fixing it, so maybe this would be on that list as well. Now, there's ways you can counter these cracking Creds Countered. You can, a few countermeasures. Obviously, if you choose stronger domain passwords, it's going to be harder. If these were, in fact, these are very short passwords I'd be cracking, and the fact I actually added them to my dictionary, these would be incredibly hard to crack. If people are using actual passphrases, caching these cache domain credentials wouldn't be very easy. So it's a harder attack to pull off from that standpoint. However, if people are using really simple short passwords, like 7-character passwords, if you got a decent machine, and as you saw how much faster his, OCLHcat was than regular. These cache domain credentials are supported by that, as I recall from seeing his slides. A few other options you can do. You can go into this particular key, which got all mangled because of the lineup length of it, and tell it not to cache any credentials. The problem with that is you better have a very reliable network and very reliable domain controllers. Otherwise, if it goes down, people aren't going to be able to log in, which, depending on your environment, is not going to be a good thing. And you can set that via GPO if you really want to. Also, you can use a lot of the same fascist methods I mentioned before. If the hard drive is completely encrypted, it's going to be hard to extract that system and security file to be able to dump the hashes the way I showed you. A little bit of information on unknown apps. And this part I think is interesting from the standpoint, let's say you have an application that you have no idea where it's storing the password. Well, we want to figure out how it's doing that. I have several different tools I use for trying to figure out what is writing where. ProcessActivityView and RegFromApp are two tools I like. And these are both from Nearsoft and Procmon. Of the three, I like Procmon the best. I'm going to go ahead and demo those real quick as well. I'm going to switch to my Windows VM and show this off. Alright. Trying to remember which particular things I want to show. Okay. I'm going to, for giggles, I'm going to shut down WinVNC. Exactly the way I want to do it. Actually, now I think about it, I don't need to actually stop it. If I go into password class, tools, not in the Nearsoft folder, but here in this folder right inside tools, I have ProcessActivityView. I'm going to right click on it and tell it run as administrator. It doesn't automatically know to try to promote its privileges, so I have to manually tell it. And then in this list, I got to find WinVNC and choose it. And hopefully I chose the right instance of it. No. Die. Alright. Load up WinVNC. Now I'm also going to load up this RegFromApp. And you notice that time I didn't run it with admin privileges. It didn't show me nearly as many processes. You got to make sure you right click on it and say run as administrator. Yes. I left UAC on just to be a worst case scenario. And I'm going to bring up WinVNC. Alright, I have these two running in the background. Now I'm going to go into WinVNC, and I always showed you where this password happens to be. But I'm going to its admin properties and muck around. Let's set it to bad pass. Say apply. OK. Well, nothing came up in the registry. And probably, yes. Maybe because it wasn't actually editing anything in the registry. But if we look here, we see that ProcessActivityView, notice it started messing around with two different files. One was inside of local temp, and one was inside of UltraVNC. So if we go and look at that file, which I always showed you earlier when we were looking around for UltraVNC, now I know what file that password is possibly stored in, because as soon as I edited the password, that file was touched by that process. So that's one way you can find out. Let me show you a different tool that we can use, and maybe use something a little bit more, maybe a little bit more complicated. Let's use Procmon.
You got a security warning.
Thanks for the warning. About the warning. Alright, let me open up Procmon. Procmon is something from Microsoft now since they bought System Internals. And I like it even better. There's things that I've seen that got missed in by Near's tools. Not saying anything wrong with Near's tools, but that I can find in Process Monitor. I just started it up. I'm going to reset the filters to default so it shows me all the processes and everything that everything is doing. You can do that also by going to Filter and say Reset Filter. This is important so that you see everything. And I have it up and running right now. I can go in and I can turn off things I want to view. I can view process activity, network activity, file system activity, and registry activity. At this point, I don't want to see anything about processes and network activity, so I'll turn off those two. So basically, I'm just looking at registry and also, file system activity. And I want to see some individual app, what it's up to. Well, I already had a demo app, if anybody wants to play with it, and it's called Password Example. It basically has my face as an icon looking awfully morose. If you want to see what it's doing, Process Monitor is awesome for this because you can click this little scope, point it at the window for your process. You can actually manually find it also. It's just easier to use the scope. And it only shows me that process. Now I can go looking through this. But you see it shows me a lot of stuff. Like it shows me like DLLs it's loaded and all sorts of different places in the registry it's looked. I probably want to look for specific types of activity. Well, I can go into Filter and modify this filter. As you can see, currently it's filtering by the PID because it found out the PID when I did that little scope dragging. It found out what the PID of that process was. I can filter by tons of things, but I want to filter specifically by operation. And let's say the operation I want to look for, I want to see if it's doing anything interesting with the registry. So let's do reg, or actually let's use the drop down since I may very well misspell it in the process. There's something called reg query value, and we'll want to see reg query value. We want to add that to a list of filters. Say OK, and now it should only show us items where a registry value was queried. Now, if you see it has the password up there and it knows it because it has it, starred off, it's possible you could look through all of this and eventually find it. But as you can see, there's a lot of details in there. If I actually know the password, I might be able to go choose the first record because it seems to search from whatever your current record is. Edit find. And I happen to know the password I typed in was bad pass. It may not show me that because of the way it encodes it. I think it encodes it in a hexadecimal. Alright, found it anyway. And I know I entered that, and right there you see it's pointing me towards that key. And that's where it queried this particular value, and it got that key out. Another nice thing about this tool is I think we can right-click and say jump to, and it takes us right there in the registry editor. And we can look at it. And you see how bad pass was stored in there as the password. Now granted, this is a lame application I wrote myself to demonstrate this with class because it's easier to do this than to load up Skype and to work through all the different records that are coming up to find that. And I've used it on Skype before to figure out, I still don't know how they obfuscate it, but to figure out where I think it's storing the password. But that's one way you can use this. A better way, probably from the filter standpoint, if we go back into filter and we remove this one and we go ahead instead do a search for registry set value. Like for instance, if we have control of an application and we go ahead and set the value ourselves, so we can watch that as well. Yes, add my item, say OK. And, oh, that's right, I never actually have set it, because I never actually hit log in. If I log in with the proper username and password, it will set it for me. And it shows them to me right there. I could also do much the same thing with file system operations with this. I can go into filter, I can remove this one, and I can look for, I think it's file write. Let me look. Oh, write file. It's frozen up on me. Alright. Well, let me tell you something. This is an exercise for everybody else to try. Do the exact same thing I did for all the registry stuff, but instead, look for write file. And you'll see where I not only stored the password in the registry, I also did it for the file system, just to give you an example. Oh,